So we're back for another Flash Chat, DT2 Comics Chat here. My real name is David Taylor II. You know me as DT2 Comics Chat from Twitter and my website and my Facebook page. We're here to Flash Chat, the latest episode of the Flash Marathon. And it's the first episode post-crisis. The first episode post-crisis, so there's a lot of stuff to deal with, a lot of stuff to see. Okay? So remember, instead of a written review, what I do in Flash Chat is I not only answer your questions, but I give my answers. I give much more extensive answers because people ask me all the time, what do you think about the episode? So instead of just like, the written review, then I use this format to let you know what I really think. So I want you to download the podcast and or watch the YouTube video. You can follow us live on Twitter because Flash Chat happens every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, the week after a Flash episode has aired. And the reason that I do it that way is because I want to give everybody a chance to have seen the episode. When I first started Flash Chat, I did it on the Wednesday following the episode. I did it the next day, and a lot of people hadn't seen it yet. So I moved it to a week after the new episode airs so that people will have enough time to see the episode and participate in the chat. So find me on Twitter, DT2 Comics Chat, and then you can participate in Flash Chat Live. You can answer the questions on the Twitter stream, use the hashtag FlashChat so everybody can follow along, and then I will shout you out in this video, podcast, broadcast, however you're experiencing. I'll shout you out and answer your questions specifically. Okay? All right. So now let's deal with our first question. The first question is, what were your expectations for what post-crisis life would be like with Team Flash? Okay? I'll tell you mine. My first expectation was that they were going to spend a little bit more time dealing with the aftermath because it feels like on some level that they just kind of moved on. I'm not saying that's bad or wrong, but I'm saying I think that Cisco gets it. Cisco gets that what has just happened is just so monumental and just so life-changing, and it's telling, as he says, that none of their doppelgangers made it. So as far as he knows, and there's something interesting that we'll talk about in a minute. As far as Cisco knows, he is now the only version of himself that survived the merging of the multiverse. Same with Caitlin and Killer Frost. That's not actually technically true, but he doesn't know that yet. We as the audience know that, but he doesn't know that. But he says that none of them survived, but the villains did, which is really funny. Now that's a little bit Silver Age, that's a little bit cartoony because that's just so convenient. How convenient that of all the people that survived, they're all villains, and there's no duplicate heroes or no duplicate members of Team Flash or whatever. Okay, but Cisco gets it, that it's just kind of ridiculous and scary and frightening, and Frost keeps telling him, why is he worried? He needs to chill, and he's like, you don't get it. There are Earths out there that have just been destroyed, that have just been melted and now been merged. And now, he lists all the CW heroes, but we know it's just a roll call of the CW shows, Black Lightning, Supergirl, Batwoman. He said we're all, on the same Earth now. Superman, we're all on the same Earth now. And history has been rewritten, but I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the next question. But anyway, so yeah, I think Cisco's reaction is proportionate, and I think that Caitlin's is not. And Barry, maybe it'll happen later, but he doesn't really spend this episode reacting to that. And that's just really bizarre because if something like that happened in real life and you realize that history had been rewritten to say that all of the heroes had always been there, wouldn't that be something worth? Because Frost is looking at his little notebook because Cisco, is the fanboy. He's the fanboy perspective. He always has been. So he has his little cards with, the different characters. And Caitlin is like, when did you find time to do all this? But that's what fanboys do, even if it costs you sleep. And he gets that this is a big deal, okay? And it doesn't seem like anybody else gets it. I know he's the only one that remembers everything that happened, but they understand something. They understand something happened. They understand something about Crisis. Because Supergirl was like, why am I here? Why do we have pictures? Why do you know us? And Marv Wolfman, his cameo was like, you've always been here. You guys get together all the time. So Supergirl remembers. They remember. The Paragons remember. And Cisco does too. So anyway. Polly says, Polly's writing P_Maker, M-A-C-H-O-R, follow her on Twitter. I didn't really know what to expect, but I was hoping for more mini crossovers, think Arrow and Flash Season 1, for Cisco to have his power still, and for things to be roundabout better, and more like OG Team Flash, I guess, like a fresh start. And I'm going to say here that I totally understand that impulse. What I'm saying on the live broadcast is that Cisco is the only one that seems to grasp the magnitude of what's happened. That's the thing. Okay? Cisco is the only one that seems to get the magnitude of what has gone down and what that means going forward with the Earth's merged and the history being rewritten that Superman's rocket landed on Earth Prime and Supergirl's rocket landed on Earth Prime and Black Lightning has always been operational on Earth Prime. And that means Batman has been on Earth Prime. Batwoman been on Earth Prime. So it's a big deal. Okay, let's move on to question 2. Question 2 says, for a minute there, when Barry saved the day at the CC Jitters reopening, we had the old Barry back. Did you miss Jitters? Do you miss smiling Barry? My answer to that question, those questions are yes and yes. Yes, I missed Jitters because it was kind of like, it's like the second main location. Team Flash has 3 locales. It has Star Labs, which is the main locale. It has the West household, and it has Jitters. And yes, I miss Jitters because it's just such a, season 1 is just such a kind of a trademark place for the Flash until, it's difficult not to see it. So yes, I missed it, and I'm glad it's back. And I always miss smiling Barry because if you know anything about the Flashes from the comics, you understand that the Flash family is the happiest superhero family on the DC side. Okay? They're not motivated by tragedy. Remember that Superman has the weight of his dead race on him all the time. Just because he doesn't talk about it all the time doesn't mean it doesn't affect him. John Jones, the Martian Manhunter, has the weight of his dead race on him all the time. He does talk about it. But the Flashes, the original Flash, the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick, the Silver Age Flash, Barry Allen, Impulse, Wally West, the Bronze Age Flash. All of the Flashes are married with children and happy. They're happy to be heroes. When they do their superheroing, they do it with a smile. That's kind of their trademark. So when Barry is characterized like that, that is 100% spot on who Barry Allen is as a Flash. So yes, I missed both. I love both. I'm glad we got a chance to see both of those things back in action. So let me get to your answers. Chris Cofer fan says the same thing I said, yes on both questions. Polly says, oh my goodness, when I saw this, I was thinking, finally. Okay, so CC knows the Flash and he saves them a lot. Even the coffee, my hero. But that whole feeling of this is right. But that whole feeling of this is right started to dwindle away. This part, though, is what I think of when I think of Flash. And I'm going to say, agree completely. The Flashes are the happiest heroes in DC Comics? They're all family men and love to help people and do so with a smile. This is the proper characterization of Barry Allen. So, that's why, you hear me say it all the time. That's why I strongly encourage people to read comics. Now, we are at a point in comics history where you're really going to have to pick your jumping on point. You really are, because there's so much history now going back. Remember that Superman came out in 1938 and Batman came out in 1939. Okay, let me tell you what year The Flash came out. The Flash first appeared in 1940. Okay, that was Flash Comics #1. So, with Jay Garrick. So that's what I mean when I say, if you think about it, 1940, that's 80 years this year, 80 years worth of history, okay? And so you're going to have to pick your jumping on point. I know there's plenty of animation and there's plenty of movies, but I strongly suggest that you read comics, and where you want to start is with trade paperbacks. Trade paperbacks encapsulate story arcs, so where you don't have to buy the individual issues, but where you can buy the whole story. That's especially a smarter way to start as you get into the 90s, late 80s and 90s, and definitely the first 10 years of the 2000s, the new millennium, because they started making all these crossovers, but you had to buy 20 different books to follow the story. They started making these crossovers that were just multiple books wide. And maybe you don't want that. Maybe you just want the main story. Or maybe you can't afford it. That's the other thing. Maybe you do want it, but you can't buy all those books. Trade paperbacks is the way to go. And with The Flash, I recommend Terminal Velocity. I recommend Dead Heat. If you want to get a book to help you understand the difference between Jay and Barry, you want to get an issue called The Flash of Two Worlds. That's their first kind of appearance together. But that's where you need to start. But you need some kind of comic background, I believe, to really get the full enjoyment out of the characters, no matter what other medium they show up in. If you just know them through animation and movies, that is a very limited, I'm sad to say, very limited perspective on the characters themselves. Because animation and movies don't have a lot of time for characterization, especially if they have multiple heroes in one outing. Mr. E, his handle on Twitter is Mr. E231, says that was cool. Sadly, didn't last long. And I'm saying I was thinking the same thing. Great start, and then Team Iris, which is exactly what happened, and we'll get to that in later questions. That this was a really good start, and then, Barry actually becomes the B story in this episode. Terrence Robinson, TJ Future CPA, says, strangely, as a coffee drinker, Jitters is just okay with me. It could easily be a diner or a Waffle House, but Happy Barry is always welcome. And I'm going to say, true, but I believe the idea behind Jitters is being trendy. And there's nothing more trendy these days than a coffee shop, which is true. And as we know, Starbucks started that in real life. But these days, in terms of something that's going to bend with the culture and change with the times and always try to have the latest whatever, coffee shops, for right now. Things always change, culture always shifts. It won't be that way forever. But for right now, the latest everything you'll find in Starbucks and coffee shops and that kind of thing, because their point, again, is to be trendy. Okay? All right. Let's move on to question 3. Question 3 says, Cisco brought up a very important point. What has happened to Earth Prime's history now that it's been rewritten as if the other CW heroes were always on Earth Prime? And I touched on that a little bit before, but again, it changes everything. It changes everything if Superman's always been on this Earth. Changes absolutely everything. Because then you have to ask, where's the Justice League? Same with Jean Jones, if he's always been on this Earth. Okay, if Supergirl has always been on this Earth, did she get here before Superman? Because the way they retconned her story was that she took off before Superman, and she's older than Clark, but her rocket got stuck, suspended animation stasis, got off track, whatever, and got to Earth after Superman had already grown up. But she was actually sent to Earth in the new retcon to take care of him because she thought she was following baby Kal-El to the Earth. But they retconned that, and so that's their story. Now, that's not how it happened in the comics at all. If you want to know how it happened in the comics, Superman showed up in 1938. Supergirl showed up in 1959. So that's why I'm not trying to hear all this retcon stuff that they've done with the show about she was first, she's the strongest, or whatever. Superman was first, and he's out there for years. And everything about Supergirl's everything is keying off of his motifs, not the other way around. But anyway, so she shows up for the first time in the comics in 1959. But now, everybody has been here all this time, which is another reason you'll never get me to believe or accept that Batman has abandoned Gotham. What Batman is that? What Batman did you read about? They made the same mistake in The Dark Knight Rises. Bruce Wayne would never abandon Gotham. If his body's broken, he would wear an exoskeleton and make those remote control bat robots. And then they say that Batman Beyond is AU alternate universe, but even if it is, Bruce Wayne would not abandon Gotham. And anybody that thinks that he would fundamentally misunderstands Batman and his character and his motivation. So what does that do to Batwoman's story if that's now the case? That's my point. If all those heroes were always here, it changes everything. And Cisco seems to be the only one reacting proportionally. But let me read what you guys have to say. Mauricio, RMC, in realidad nuoso, says, if there is something that is noted, it's that the writers were taken to the letter and very seriously the ability of the crisis to reorder reality. And I'm going to say, yeah, that's what was said before it even was in production, that each showrunner was going to have an opportunity to fix things that they thought needed to be fixed. Biggest evidence is the series finale of Arrow, which is true. If you didn't see the series finale of Arrow, I recommend it, but bring your tissues because it's a tearjerker, man. It's so sad. There are happy moments. I don't want to spoil it if you haven't seen it. There are happy moments that I really, really liked. And there's a lot of restoration that I really, really liked. But the overall tone of the episode is just so sad. It's so sad. But it's the biggest evidence of righting wrongs, as it were, in the CW verse, is the series finale of Arrow. Terrence Robinson says, what do you say about its history? That is a task. We came back to black hole existing for 7 years. Just imagine trying to put together history. True, but that means it also offers a lot of writing cheats, which it does. A whole lot of stuff now can just be written in and say, well, it's always been that way, because you had this massive retcon. Polly says, that's something I'm not really qualified to answer, but in this wake, definitely all history on Prime is rewritten so that all heroes are always here and always living together. It's rather confusing then. It's a rather confusing timeline then, because that means that no one else should remember what Earth they are from. So Supergirl should forget her Earth because she was always here. Or they should forget their Earths because they were always here, right? And I'm going to say, technically, I believe you're right, but the Paragons remember everything. They were outside of time and space when everything happened. So they retain their memories. That, however, still doesn't explain Cisco getting it on the level he does. Maybe breach powers. Maybe Cisco's breach powers help him to understand what's going on because he's used to dimension hopping. He's used to dimension jumping. So maybe that he has something going on with his memory that helps him. I'm not sure. JB, Mr. No Follower says, I think the CW doesn't exactly want to say yet until they're sure what characters they may bring back. And I'm going to say, agree, absolutely, 100%. Again, it's a huge writing cheat to not to have to explain anything about any character's presence, since they can now say, oh, they've always been here, which is true. I hope they take advantage of that and give them backstory and make the stories worthwhile. But if they don't want to now, they don't have to. They can just say, well, you know, retcon, they've always been here. Okay. Question 4. Okay, with this headline, and the headline is from the Central City Citizen, and it says, Flash returns, stops crisis. So my question is, with this headline, has the Flash just completely undermined its original premise? Okay? Now, you've heard me say it on Twitter before, but if a show goes beyond season 4, it will eventually wrap around to completely destroy its original premise, unless it's something written excellently like Breaking Bad, something that has a plan and they stick to the plan and they do everything that they had in the plan and then they let it go. It has a beginning, middle, and end. If it's something like that, that's different. Something that's well written, well planned, well executed, the whole nine, like a series like Breaking Bad most definitely is. But if it's a show where they don't have an overarching plan to begin with and they're kind of making it up each season as they go, then I guarantee you if they go more than 4 seasons, see Smallville, if they go more than 4 seasons, they're going to end up completely undermining, turning on its ear, turning inside out the whole original premise of the show that they brought us in with in the first place. They're going to just flip the whole script and it's going to be something else now. Okay? My opinion, my perspective. Let me hear what you guys had to say. Critical Blast, at Critical Blast, that's his Twitter handle, says, way too much Deus Ex Machina for way too much built-up tension. And I'm going to say, agree wholeheartedly, but that's the CW way. Remember Smallville's Doomsday? Okay, because that is the CW way. Just, you know, all this buildup, all this tension, all this big confrontation, and then it's over in less than 10 minutes, and Clark, you know, in Doomsday didn't really fight. It wasn't the fight we expected, and he knocks him out with one punch and sends him sailing over the city, and oh, okay, that's the CW way. Johnny Torch, which is Johnny with 2 N's and an IE underscore Torch, says, I see it as when Arrow moved beyond the season-long flashbacks or the list. It had to happen eventually the shows need to keep evolving. And to that I will say evolution is one thing, undermining the basic premise is another. Voyager was always about getting back home and the adventures they had along the way. That never changed, because it didn't. The basic premise of Voyager is that they got stuck in the Delta Quadrant and they needed to get back home, and they didn't want it to take the 70 or 75 years that they estimated and maximum work that it would take. So they were always looking for, once they found out about how the Borg get back and forth with their network, with their, I forgot what you call it, but with their cube network, that could go back and forth. And Voyager was always looking for those shortcuts, so it didn't have to burn up 70 years. But the basic premise of the show never changed. They got stuck in the Delta Quadrant in the first episode, and everything was about the adventures they had along the way on trying to get back home, okay? Which they did in the last episode. So that's not true that you have to undermine the premise. Most shows do, though. That's what I'm trying to say. Most shows after season 4, they just turn everything on its head, and it's not the same show. So some people might feel that's good. Some people might feel it's bad. What I feel is that if it's written well, we can go with it. If it's written well, if it makes sense organically, we can go with it. Terrence Robinson says, I don't think so. I believe the premise is more in the opening of the show. Save people, but he's the only one fast enough. Now, that's a good response. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say that's a great response. Okay. Ashley, which is SH, yes please, the A being the @ symbol. Ash, yes please, with the A being the @ symbol, says, I get not wanting to be beholden by the headline, but for Flash fans especially, this newspaper screwed us so much over the course of 6 years, so we deserve something a little bit closer to what was supposed to happen. Now it all just feels for nothing. Continue tweet, not to mention what supposedly happened from the newspaper article sounded way better than the crossover we got. I'm going to say, once again, you nailed it, because she did. All of that is exactly what I was feeling. And remember, we also didn't see Eobard Thawne in the Crisis mix. Because we didn't. That newspaper has been so central to the mythos, and now it's just over. So I really, really, really like what Ashley is saying. I, in fact, am going to read it again, because what she said was so well said. Ashley says, I get not wanting to be beholden by the headline, but for Flash fans especially, this newspaper screwed us so much over the course of 6 years, so we deserve something a little bit closer to what was supposed to happen. Now it all just feels for nothing, which is absolutely right. Not to mention what supposedly happened from the newspaper article sounded way better than the crossover we got. Also right. Mr. E says, yes, they basically said letting the headline in the newspaper dictate their storylines was like putting the carriage before the horse. Here I thought it was a narrative challenge and we'd get to see them try and overcome, not lazily sidestep. That's right. That's right. That's right. Just like Ashley said, the story that was promised by this pivotal headline, which dominated so many storylines over the years, was way better than what we got. And again, no Eobard. which was one of the biggest omissions from the crisis. I did not understand that. That did not make any sense to me. Because remember the last thing Eobard said to Barry when Nora was dying was, "See you in the next crisis." Do you remember that? That's the last thing Reverse Flash says to Barry. "See you in the next crisis." And then what happens? He just doesn't show up. Again. Polly says, "It seems like it to me, and it was almost a mock of what has been for the past so many years." Exactly. Actually, there was a point made that made me wonder, why show this at all, or why is it continuing after? I hope that makes sense. And I'm going to say, yes, and what is the status of Gideon? How much does she remember? How much does Gideon remember of these events? It reminds me a little bit of 3PO and R2 in the Star Wars saga. If you remember, after the prequels, in Revenge of the Sith, Bail Organa, Leia's stepdad, had 3PO's memory wiped, but not R2's. So that means that everything that happened in the prequels, R2 remembers, all down through Rogue One and all down through the original trilogy. So at some point you have to wonder, why didn't R2 just say what he had to say? Because in The Empire Strikes Back, it seems that we get the impression that we know that is Luke's first time on Dagobah, but that is not R2's first exposure to Yoda. R2 knows who Yoda is, remember? So, so anyway, I kind of feel like that with Gideon. She's the AI in the mix. What does she know? What does she remember? What does she retain? And all of a sudden, her records have been changed or whatever. Does she remember what happened before? So much. So much needs to be dealt with. So many questions, so little time. All right, question 5. All right. This Diggle Green Lantern tease is already tired. Do you think we'll ever actually see Diggle don the ring and the costume? Now, what I have to say about that is basically what I said in the question, okay? I'm sick of these eternal teases. I got sick of Smallville. That's never going to happen to me again as a fan. I'm never going to follow a show for 10 years and it doesn't have a payoff. It lured me in with the premise of seeing Superman, but we never actually get to see him. And they just tease you and tease you and tease you, and every element of Superman's world was brought in. Everything in Superman's world was brought in. Everybody could fly before Clark could, and then at the end, we get a glimpse of him changing to the costume, a glimpse of him, we see him in a distance, and then we see him up close, but never like a full body shot, and it's only for a few moments, and he does a shirt rip at the end, but that was just not enough for a whole lot of fans. That's the way I already feel about Diggle being John Stewart, or Stewart being his middle name, or his mother's maiden name, or whatever. And they've teased and hinted and winked. And remember the last one when we had John Wesley Shipp come back as the last crossover as Jay Garrick, he said, "John, where's your ring?" And then we see Diggle get the ring from a meteor in the sky at the end of Crisis. So we need to go ahead on and jump on this Diggle as Lantern thing. I'm not waiting 10 more years to get a glimpse of him in the... I understand Green Lantern may be hard on the budget, but, just have him in one episode, or just have him in, a few scenes, or just, he can have a minimal presence, but we do need to see him at this point. There's another thing we've been waiting on since they mentioned Hal Jordan in the pilot. Remember that? Let me hear what you guys have to say. Mauricio says there is no remote possibility of seeing Diggle using the ring, and it would be good if we cut with this live. And I'm going to respond with a gift because Mauricio will be bringing down the hammer. I'm going to respond with a gift that says, boom! Because that's what that statement was. That was a boom. Mauricio just cuts to the chase, just cut the crap. It's just a lie, and we need to let it go. Okay, Ben Skywalker, his handle is Dougie Fresh, Dougie with a Y, Fresh 13, says, if not for the Green Lantern HBO show, then they'll probably show it for the Superman Lois Lane show. Both are under the same producer. And I'm going to say that's a distinct possibility since the Diggles moving to Metropolis, because remember, they are at the end of Crisis, that's what they're moving. But fans of the Flash deserve a Flash Green Lantern team up, because those are some of the most classic team ups ever. And they are, once again, that's why I say you need to read the comics. Because when you see Barry and Hal in the Silver Age doing some of their team ups, they're just awesome. Some of those stories are awesome, deep, socially relevant, but not beating you over the head with agendas as opposed to now. But they're just some of the best stories ever. And as a fan, I've been a lifelong fan of the Flash. I want to see that. I don't want to see Diggle with Superman. I don't mind seeing that, but Diggle was introduced on Arrow. He was introduced in Arrowverse. He's crossed over on the Flash, and if he puts that ring on, and he puts that costume on, he needs to have some adventures with Barry or Wally or both. Critical Blast says he got the ring in the last few minutes of Arrow. Polly says, I was wondering about that or thinking maybe a spinoff, that would be awesome, but it seems like we're getting something else that I probably won't watch. But I would so watch this. Okay? The first, Aries K. Carr, says, nope. Yeah. Johnny Torch says, I think at the very least he'll become a Lantern in an upcoming crossover. I'm still guessing they'll use Superman and Lois as a backdoor pilot introduction to the character. And I'm going to say, but Crisis was already that backdoor pilot. We need to move forward, not wait another year or two. Okay, because we really do. Because again, these eternal teasers, man, they're already old. They're already making me tired. Okay, so let me look at question number 6. What did you think of yet another Dr. Light and her powers? Because this Dr. Light has the ability to shoot, well, she has the ability to create black holes and project that kind of energy, but she can't control it. So she needs a gun to focus it, to localize it. So she can shoot localized black holes. And by the way, I don't think I put it in the questions, but I am going to bring up that whole thing about Iris getting hit with a black hole shot and it just burned up her coat is crap. Everybody else that got hit by them shots disintegrated. But Iris gets hit on her shoulder and she kind of shrugs it off to whatever. Anyway, question 6. Dr. Light comes across as another character that they don't know what to do with. If you've read Identity Crisis, you know what I'm talking about. You know what they had him become in Identity Crisis. And as far as I'm concerned, that didn't really improve him or make him any more relevant or make him any more scary. It just made him a little bit more depraved. But it did not make him more interesting to me as a character with what they did with him in Identity Crisis. So this is another version of Dr. Light, a character that's always been a bit of a joke character. He's that character that wants to be cool and wants to be an alpha and wants to be an A-list villain, but he never quite gets there. Okay, that's always been who he's been traditionally and historically. So this is a completely different kind of thing, and this character looks like she stepped out of Tron Legacy, which is not a bad thing, but it's a little bit more of a Matrix / Tron Legacy character than a Flash character from my point of view. Let me see what you guys had to say. Johnny Torch says, another female Dr. Light, sigh, sad face. Yeah. Polly says, I was disappointed of all the characters and all they could use. We get a gender-bent Dr. Light, which I heard was on the Titans as well, but as a man, true. This is number 2, the show they made female, and they always seem to do it to my favorite characters. Sigh, but there was another female Dr. Light. I don't know about her powers. Cool, I guess I just wanted more. Critical Blast says another villain needs a weapon to focus her abilities. But is she being set up for a redemption arc to make her a hero like in the comics? I'm going to say, great point. And Lord, I hope not. Because I'm sick of every villain needing or every villain having a redemption arc, and every villain needing to be turned into a hero. I'm so tired of that. I am. I'm completely tired of that whole idea. You know, every villain doesn't have to be gray or morally ambiguous or sympathetic or have to be turned into a hero or need to be redeemed. We don't have to do that with every villain, okay? It's getting on my nerves. It's already worn out and played out, okay? All right, let's move on to question number 7 because our hour always flies by. This was primarily a Team Citizen episode. Team Citizen on this show is Iris, Camilla, and, oh dang, I forgot her name. That's how disinterested I am. What's her name with the spectrum powers? This is primarily a Team Citizen episode. That shows you my level of interest. Do you think they need more screen time or less? And my answer to that question is I think they need less. Because why is Barry relegated to the B story on his own show? Okay? Now, everybody, got on me on Twitter because you know how folks need to, Allegra, that's her name, Allegra, and Cecile. Okay, in the picture I put on Twitter, I didn't have Cecile in that picture. But Iris, Camilla, Allegra, and Cecile are Team Citizen. And I'm like, when Barry Allen's the B story on his own show. Hey there everyone, David Taylor 2 here. I am so excited about the launch of the Nephilim Wars. This comic is a part of my War in Heaven series, which includes novels, coloring books, and an RPG. Nephilim are half-human, half-angel hybrids, where their dads are from heaven, but their moms are from Earth. My comic, The Nephilim Wars, is set at the end of the 30th century, and the Nephilim are breeding again, and not just humans. Yikes! The humans already went to war with the angels once before when they found out that children were being born that were different. That first war was ugly, and the whole planet changed. Ashley says, I wouldn't mind them getting the occasional A plot or having a consistent C plot, but their current presence is suffocating. I signed up for The Flash. I want that guy and his friends fighting the bad guys, not this. This is why I'm not watching right now. And I am going to have to give her a round of applause for that one, because once again, she nails it. That is absolutely right. We signed up because we wanted to watch The Flash. The Flash and Friends. We did not want the Friends to become more important, and I'm going to talk about that in future Flash chats because they're bringing Sue Dibney on. I want to see Sue, but I don't want to see them do Identity Crisis, and I don't want her and Ralph's relationship to begin to overshadow, again, Team A or Barry himself. Okay? Johnny Torch says, I don't mind giving them the odd episodes focus, but the show is called The Flash. Absolutely right. It seems all of the rest of this season is going to be a Team Citizen heavy thing. It's okay, at least they're reporting, but it's still The Flash, right? I mean, The Flash should be the main character. Okay, NYC King Dr. Beast 1 says less, very much less. JP Money says less, I'm sorry, but I personally don't care about Team Citizen. It's called The Flash, not the Iris West or Team Citizen show. Okay, and definitely going to have to give him a clap on that too. Because everybody's saying the same thing. A few people said they didn't mind, but a lot of people are saying, we signed up to watch The Flash. So, don't understand why that's such a difficult concept. Okay, we've got to keep moving because we're running out of time. So many questions. Question 8. They brought back Mirakuru and the idea of more super soldiers. Do we want to see Slade back? Do we also want to see yet another super soldier arc? My answer to that question is we got a version of Slade that I thought was pretty good on Titans, actually. And we know that Titans survived. I would actually like to bring that version of Slade over to the CW Arrowverse shows, if at all possible. I know that Manu played Slade on, the original Flash arcs or whatever in the original Arrow episodes, but I really like Slade on the DC Universe Titans streaming show, and I would like to see more blend there, if at all possible. No slight to Manu's Slade at all. I just would like to see that happen. Kind of tie the continuities together a little bit better. Terrence says, I forgot, was the Mirakuru real? It was Barry chasing his tail. I have to rewatch. And I'm going to say it was a tail. It was a tail chase. It was a tail chase, but the idea is still there because it is. Johnny Church says, I'd love to see Slade again, and if they were going to do it, it really should have been on Arrow before the end of the show. Polly says, I think Slade's story needs to be over. He's been a never-ending boil and needs to just stop. More super soldiers seems to be beating a dead horse as well. We have limitless options, so let's start using them. And I'm going to say I agree, both in the comics and in the Arrowverse. He's like a roach that won't die. But I said on the live stream that I think that DCU Titans version of Slade should be brought over to the Arrowverse. Okay. Georgina Black, Gina_M_Black is her Twitter handle. Follow her on Twitter. Says, Slade, definitely would like to see him again. He can be an authority they lean on. Maybe bring his ex, Adeline, in. Though it would have to be a side thread because I need more old school rogue action too. I need more old school rogue action too. And I'm going to say, great perspective, bringing up the fact that we seriously need more rogues here. But I think they'll be coming this season, coming in these episodes. At least I hope they will. Okay. Moving on to question 9. What did you think of Iris's reporting and detective work? People saying breath of fresh air after 2 seasons of forced character work. She's finally back to doing what made her character enjoyable in season 3, which I think is right. Polly said that was Ben Skywalker, Dougie Fresh. Polly said sure knows how to be an aggressive investigator, too much so. She needs to be more Kara or Lois type of reporter. This is making her look more arrogant and naive and technically a bratish snot. And I'm going to say she is definitely quite naive. She always talks like she can't be hurt. Because she does. She always confronts her suspects or witnesses or even metas. Iris always talks like she can't be hurt. And I'm like, that's a little bit of fourth wall breaking if you think about it. That's, playing, that's Candace playing Iris like, I got main character power, so, and that's, so that means that Jeopardy is never really real. Terrence Robinson says, I like it if this is the character's permanent lane, to be honest. Chris Kofer fan says, I liked him, but she did put herself in danger, in my opinion, especially at the very end of the episode when she was snooping around in that abandoned office, ended up being pulled through a mirror. That's right. It's kind of aggressive, but kind of a foolish kind of aggressive instead of a wise kind of aggressive. Okay, question 10. If you're unfamiliar with the name McCulloch, that's the original Mirror Master, one of my favorite rogues. which they have now gender swapped. Are we going to have an adventure inside the mirror dimension? Polly says, another one like they did with my top 3 villains, which the Flash so nicely changed for me. Mirror Master, the Fiddler, and Black Bison, which they screwed up and I'm still irate about. But yes, looks like we're going to get a Doctor Strange, mirror dimension. I hate being that guy, but Scudder was the original. McCulloch was the second one. That's JLA Avenger, which is right. And I'm going to say, you are correct. I forgot. He's right, I did forget. I did forget that Scudder was the first. But he's right. But McCulloch was a Mirror Master, let's put it that way. He just wasn't the first one. I forgot about Scudder. It's been a while. Okay? This episode set us up with evil mirror twin Iris, which it did. Iris gets pulled into the mirror dimension at the end, and she comes out either changed or she gets swapped. She gets reversed, probably, because it's the mirror image. So it's either a clone of her that's reversed or her with her personality turned inside out. So here's the question. How long will it take each member of Team Flash to realize next week that that's not original Iris? Okay. I got one answer. And Polly says 1 whole episode. It should take them 5 minutes, but okay. Probably should. And again, I want to mention here that the reason I didn't mention Cisco leaving is because I'm tired of it. If they're going to get rid of, if Carlos wants to quit, then quit. Don't keep teasing to quit. Okay? And Cisco should still have his vibe powers. Turns out he only got them temporarily for the crisis. He should still have them. He shouldn't have lost them. But his arc is getting repetitive and redundant now, and I'm getting tired of it. So that's why I didn't bring up him leaving, because I'm getting tired of that. Okay? So, you know, he needs to make up his mind. Okay? My last question, question 12, was it just me or did these black hole powers work differently every time we saw them? Because they really did. Remember I mentioned earlier in the broadcast how sometimes they disintegrated a whole wall. Sometimes when it hit, it spread, you know, and that everything caught in its wake got disintegrated. But when it hit Iris, it just burned up her jacket and her shirt sleeve, and it burned her arm, and that was it. Just I don't know how I feel about that. Again, main character powers activate. Haven't gotten any answers on Twitter on that yet. So anyway, so we're coming to the end of our hour, so we need to wrap up. So what I will say in my closing remarks are, you know, oh wait, just got to answer. Polly said every single time. They worked differently every single time we saw them. So what I will say is, this episode was not at all what I was expecting for the first episode after Crisis. And I think my biggest issue is, number one, Barry being the B story. And number two, my biggest issue is the fact that, you know, those that remember or could remember, or Cisco or whatever, it seems like the fact that all their history has been rewritten should have everybody responding like Cisco. But then again, we don't know who remembers the Earths before, because at first we can say that the Paragons remember, because they would, because they were outside of time when it happened. But how does Cisco know? And again, I think that's because of his breach powers. But I mean, you know, so it just feels, you know, really inconsistent. And so I don't know. I want them to make more of a fuss. I want them to be louder. I want them to have more to say about this smushed together Earth and this rewritten history. And Cisco's the only one looking for new people showing up and all that. And I think that is a very important point, and it should be emphasized. Okay? All right, that's our hour. Flash Chat is always the fastest hour alive. I want to thank you for everybody that joined me live on Facebook. And the full video will be posted later after I edit it. And thank you everybody that joined me on Twitter. You know, I always love shouting out your tweets and your answers, because yeah, I just love my Twitter people, man. They're intelligent. They give well thought out answers. They give, you know, good perspectives. I just love them. So I'm more than happy to shout out your answers on Flash Chat. Remember to join us. If you want to join us live, follow me on Twitter, DT2 Comics Chat. And FlashChat is live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time after a new episode of The Flash. And then you can also listen to this on the podcast, and you can watch the YouTube video once I get it uploaded. Okay? Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I will see you next time on next week's episode of FlashChat. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. And enjoy.